Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. It is 6:26 a.m. East Coast time, Wednesday, June 19th, and we're going to break down a 10-game night slate in the MLB tonight. There's a 5-game afternoon slate. There are some actual decent prize pools. I will not be covering that one, but if perhaps you watch this video before that one starts, I will have sort of a data sheet for the 5-game slate up on Patreon, and I don't think I'm going to play the afternoon slate, but I'll try to have my ranks in terms of pitchers and hitters, and I'll only be putting that out if I feel confident in it, which probably means I would have to be playing it, so stay tuned for that, but there will be a data sheet up on Patreon if you're interested. I also now do my top ranked in terms of pitchers and stacks about an hour before lock for the slates that I do play, maybe a half hour with updates. And that's something that's worked out pretty nicely the last 2 days. Obviously, some rainouts have ruined my Patrick Corbin interest and things like that. But that's something that you guys have to work through just while the time comes. I can't be telling you that it's raining, take your players out. No, that's something that you kind of have to realize, right? But let's just break down into the slate. A couple of things I ask. If you'd hit the like button, that helps me out. Go over to Patreon and do support me if you do want to get access to these data sheets, especially when I don't make videos for specific slates. They will be on there. And also hit the subscribe button. That helps me out the most. WNBA video is out. My podcast, we're digging that one back up, and there's going to be an episode out today as well. Just type Sal Vetri Show into really any podcast platform. You should be able to find it. Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, whatever it is. So yeah, if you can hit the subscribe button, that helps me out the most. Again, take 2 seconds. It literally is free to you. It might not seem like it means anything to the person behind the camera, me, but you hitting subscribe does mean a lot when it adds up and allows me to charge advertisers money for my content and showing it to you guys and just saying a 5 to 30-second spiel instead of you being charged anything for this free content. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. Hit the notification bell if you're a returning subscriber. You know how much I appreciate you. Let's get into this slate. So 10-game slate. A couple things that are interesting. Like right now, depending on what time of the day it is, Max Scherzer has a broken nose. He got that in a bunting drill on Tuesday night. He would be the top priced pitcher on this slate, coming in with a decent matchup for who Max Scherzer is against Philly. But as of right now, it's up in the air if he plays. I find it hard to believe that a pitcher can play on a broken nose like less than 24 hours later, because this is a doubleheader. So I'm not sure what they're going to do here. RotoGrinders has Eric Feed as the probable today. DraftKings has Scherzer, but the man has a broken nose and playing less than a day after that. Seems like he will be affected in some capacity, right? So as of right now, I have him off of this sheet. If things change and he is indeed in, well then yeah, I'll throw him on the sheet and we can touch on that on Patreon afterwards. So with him out, and I am going to exclude him as of right now due to having a broken nose and getting it literally less than 24 hours ago, like 12 hours ago. So yeah, starting off with Lucas Giolito, he will then be the de facto most expensive player on the slate. He's the only player above $11,000 by a wide margin. He's $1,000 more than any other pitcher on the slate. Next one, Rich Hill, $11,300 for Lucas Giolito. And here's the thing that's pretty crazy: he comes in as an underdog. Like I kind of didn't know if I was seeing this right or not. Lucas Giolito is coming in as an underdog today with John Lester on the other side of the mound. And it makes sense, right? I guess because Chicago's offense, but the White Sox offense against Lester, I guess it makes sense. But he has a 3.67 SIERA today. I don't have to tell you how great he's been pitching. I also don't have to tell you how lucky he's been getting as well. I mean, his ERA at 2.22, he's definitely getting lucky based on his SIERA. And also, if you look at his runners left on base, his stranded numbers on the year, he's leaving a lot of runners on base, which is something that you can't really keep up all season long. Eventually, there's going to be hits that come with runners on base. You don't just automatically develop this clutch gene in getting every single batter out when you have guys on second, third, even first base. So that's something that's going to swing around. That's obviously something that's not just going to crash down to earth, although it could. So that's something I keep an eye on. At $11,300, there is some interest for me. But again, walk percentage is up, and really it's the matchup, right? We know this guy can strike batters out from both sides of the plate. He has overall a 30% K rate, and really that's from both sides of the plate. He's not a platoon from either side of that plate, and he limits damage, only 0.56 home runs per 9. So those are good things, especially when he's facing an opponent that has a lot of power, really 1 through 6, 1 through 7. If Addison Russell's going to be batting 7th, I'd say that that's pretty powerful for a 7-hitter. Starting off with Schwarber, your Rizzos. I don't have to tell you the entire Cubs lineup, just to let you know that there is power here. Now, they are playing in Chicago, which so far this year has played hitter-friendly, one of the most hitter-friendly, or one of the most pitcher-friendly ballparks this year. But as the summer picks up, I imagine that can slowly come back to neutral, if not tilt hitter-friendly. So, Lucas Giolito at $11,300. Pretty much for me, it sums up to, yes, we know this guy has upside. He probably leads the whole goddamn league outside of maybe Verlander and Sale for 40-plus point performances, 35-plus point performances. He limits the damage in terms of the power department. He does give up walks, but that's not too concerning when you do limit damage and get strikeouts to have those positive points. He is an underdog today. This is a very difficult matchup. I do not want to pay up here. Now, if come game time or close to it, he's not owned at all and nobody's going to him because of this big price difference between him and the rest of the field in terms of pitching, then yeah, I'll slowly start to go back to that because he is a great pitcher. Yes, the Cubs have powerful bats, but he is an overpowering pitcher so far this year. So right now, no interest in Giolito would not make sort of this 4 or 5 person or pitcher player pool for me. On the other hand, at $10,300, I hate that he's this expensive, but he might have the best matchup based on his stuff on the slate. There's a couple other pitchers that do have good matchups, but based on his skill level versus his matchup, he might have the most overpowering matchup. And this is kind of indicated by a 250 favorite. This is Rich Hill, $10,300. Get San Francisco today, a team that you pick on all year long. Pitching in a ballpark in LA that has been very neutral. No real hitter bonus, no real pitcher bonus, so that's fine. San Francisco does not have any power. Second worst on the slate, only to the Miami Marlins, the AAA baseball team that somehow is in the MLB. They strike out San Francisco a decent amount of the time. They're facing a lefty in Hill today. They strike out more towards the lefty. Rich Hill, loads of success in terms of his stuff from the right-handed side of the plate strikeouts. He does have a little bit of a platoon. So here's what's interesting about Rich Hill. 26.2% strikeout rate on the year, 28.8 of that, so call it 29%, is coming from the right-handed side, and 23.5 is coming from the left side. So he has a platoon versus righties. The good news is he's probably going to be facing, outside of like a JT Riddle today for the Miami lineup, all righties, 8 of them. The downside is he gives up 222 ISO power to righties. He gives up 1.73 home runs per 9. It's all coming to righties. So upside, there's going to be 8 righties in this lineup, I imagine, from Miami today, and he's going to strike out like a third of them. Downside, he gives up almost 2 home runs per 9, and realistically, he's going to be giving up a home run to 2. I don't know why I keep saying Miami. San Francisco, he's going to be giving up a home run or 2 to San Francisco today. So at $10,300, yeah, he's a huge favorite. Yeah, he's going to have strikeout stuff, but he gives up power. And San Francisco's actually probably going to, I don't know why I was thinking Miami. San Francisco's probably going to have 3 lefties, honestly, in their lineup today, which limits the upside for more righties to get in there to have these power numbers, but also it limits the strikeout potential upside where he strikes out almost a third of them. So the good news, though, is that San Francisco does strike out above league average against lefty pitching, and the good news also is that they have no power. Second worst, like we said on the slate. So, yeah, Rich Hill at $10,300 makes a lot of sense. The biggest downside for Rich Hill is how deep he goes into the games. Now, as of late, we've seen this coming up. Dodgers pitchers in general to start the year, none of them were really getting pitched deep into the games. But as of late, we are seeing him get more and more run into the games instead of only going 5 1/3. Now we see him getting into the 6th inning more and more. He is now averaging 5.78 innings pitched. That pretty much means that more times than not, he's getting into the 6th inning. So Rich Hill at $10,300, the first pitcher I have interest in today. Zach Greinke against Colorado. So look, not the greatest matchup in the world. I mean, he's pitching in a ballpark in Arizona that has been very, very pitcher-friendly. He's pitching against the Colorado team that when they're away from home in Coors Field, they're a much more pedestrian team outside of your Stories and Arenados, maybe your Blackmans as well. The rest of that team is nowhere near as expensive on DraftKings and nowhere near as much power upside as when they're not in Coors Field, which makes a lot of sense. So your 192 team ISO is very much inflated, especially when they go on the road, especially when they go in a pitcher-friendly ballpark in Arizona, the complete opposite of Coors Field. Greinke on the year and on this slate, he's averaging the deepest depth into games, which is huge. The biggest thing that you want out of pitchers is, one, to be able to get strikeouts, be a strikeout pitcher. Unfortunately, Greinke has been limited there. But number 2, at least go deep into the game. So at $9,000, he becomes sort of this safer play where he'll get into the 7th inning, probably more so than anybody else on the slate, outside of potentially a Lucas Giolito. This is assuming Max Scherzer is not on the slate. I put my money on Greinke to get there more times than anybody else, maybe outside of Giolito on this slate. That's good. That allows you to get more outs, more potential for strikeouts. The downside is the guy only has a 22% strikeout rate to righties, 25.6 to lefties is pretty good though. 22.1 to righties is not that great, and you're going to get a lot of righties and a lot with power in this Colorado lineup. He gives up around average power to righties, not so much to lefties. He's only giving up about 1.04, so 1 home run per 9 innings, so more times than not in a baseball game, he will not give up a home run. So Zach Greinke becomes this safe option for me in this top tier, and you guys know how I feel, or at least you might know how I feel at this point, that when I'm paying up, I don't want a safe option. I mean, if I'm paying cash, sure, Zach Greinke becomes a very nice cash option in my opinion. The matchup is not the greatest, but when you factor in the ballpark and that Colorado does not look like the same team, they're more so around an average ISO team and power team on the road. or more so there than their actual numbers of a 192 power rating, doubles, triples, and home runs, for those of you that do not know, then yeah, Zach Greinke becomes a good cash option. I don't like playing MLB cash, so I don't really want Zach Greinke in tournaments. I like the fact that he's a favorite. I like the fact that he goes deep into the games. He's putting together a very, very sneaky good year, but there's a lot of downsides as well. The fact that he does not have strikeout upside and he's $9,000 is something I do not want. Kyle Gibson continues to pitch great. He's now priced at, though, what his ceiling sort of is. Last time out, everybody faded him because he was too expensive. He was priced at his ceiling. He hit his ceiling game. Now he has a tougher matchup, I would argue, against this Boston team that just doesn't strike out. Kyle Gibson's strikeout stuff against righties is all the way through the roof at 27.7%. Here's the downside. Boston has a lot of lefties, and they have a lot of good lefties. Imagine Benintendi will be back in this lineup. You're going to roll out your Devers. You're going to roll out whoever else. You're going to have like 3 or 4 lefties in this lineup, and usually most of them have power in the top to middle of that order. He only strikes out 22% of them, and he gives up around 200 ISO to lefties. That's one of the higher power ratings to lefties on the slate. He's going to see at least 2 of them in the top 4 or 5 bats, and he'll probably see 3 to 4 in the entire lineup. So, yeah, Kyle Gibson at 8,800. I don't want this. I don't want this in, although a ballpark in Minnesota that is very pitcher-friendly, although he's a slight favorite who does work decent depth into the games. He gets to the 6th inning quite often. I do not want Kyle Gibson against Boston today at this price point on a slate that has 20 other pitchers or 19 other pitchers. Andrew Heaney, 8,500, finally kind of came down to earth. Only had 2 Ks in his last start after going for like 10, 10, and 8 Ks in his first 3. Look, $8,500 for this lefty pitcher against this Toronto team is not terrible. I think it's a little bit maybe overpriced, but not by much. And when we factor in the rest of the slate, I'm probably not going to get there based on the rest of the slate. Look, this Toronto team I do not think is the same, and I've been preaching this, and I think I'm a little bit ahead of the curve of other people. This is not the same team that it was a month ago. Cavan Biggio is a monster. I mean, this guy comes up in less than pretty much a few weeks. He's got like 5 or 6 home runs, and he's just batting absolutely incredible. He's now their cleanup hitter, for their leadoff hitter, whatever it is. They want this guy to get more at-bats in more key situations. I don't have to continue to sound like a broken record to say this Toronto offense, I believe personally, is much better than people give it credit for. Sure, they still strike out, but in terms of not having power now, no, this is a deep lineup with power in my opinion. And it's only going to get deeper as guys return from injury. So Andrew Heaney today, yes, he has strikeout stuff. Yes, this team does strike out in general. I mean, the strikeout stuff is through the roof. I mean, it's a small 4-game sample size, right? We can't try and take it too seriously. Last game is going to kind of sway that all down a little bit, which is nice. But when he's striking out, the amount of batters he's striking out, especially lefties, it's dangerous. So I'm not saying I want Toronto bats here, but I also don't think that I want Andrew Heaney here. There's things that I don't like about him. He is getting strikeouts, but he's also giving up pop. We're getting to a sample size that I now trust a little bit more. I do need, obviously, 2 to 3 more games before I really want to analyze his pitching stuff. But through 4 games, 50% hard contact. Half the times you throw the ball, it's being hit hard that people make contact with it. So I guess not half because you're striking out batters, but those are things that concern me. 61% fly ball rate. So even though the guy is striking out a lot of batters, when they make contact, it's through the air. And again, 50% of the time, it's hard contact, which is leading to a 2.5 home run per night. That's not great. Those are not stats that I want to see out of my $8,500 pitcher. Sure, the strikeout stuff is nice, but the damage is not great either. Now, the matchup, you would say, leans beneficial. In a ballpark in Toronto that's going to lean more so towards the hitters, I'm going to stay away from $8,500 Andrew Heaney. The last guy in the 8K or above range is John Gray. I don't want any. John Gray, he struggles to limit the power from both sides of the plate or to both sides of the plate. 1.4 home runs per 9. He struggles to limit walks. 10% walk percentage or right around there with 9.6, a virtual 10%. The Sierra is not as bad as it had been in the beginning of the year, but here's the thing. You pitch in Coors Field, you're going to have some problems. So at $8,000, now on the road in Arizona, the matchup is just not something I want to pick apart in the 8K range. An Arizona team that has a 200 ISO that's finally rounding into form with guys being back and healthy. They only strike out 22% of the time. I don't want this at all. John Gray not able to limit the damage. If he starts to get behind early in terms of walks or a few runs, it's really hard for this guy to get back into a positive production spot because it can blow up really quick for him. Now, he does have a 29.5% strikeout rate, which is the second highest on the slate against righty pitchers or against righty batters. Here's the issue. You're going to face 4 to 5 lefties in this lineup where you only strike out 22% of them. So his strikeout stuff against righties is great. I love it. You're going to strike out the pitcher. Great. The problem is you're going to face four righties in like the top 5 or 6 bats in this, or four lefties in the top 5 or 6 bats in this Arizona lineup. So you do not have that platoon advantage. John Gray not in a player pool. So as of right now, from 8,000 and above, Rich Hill is the only guy that I want to play. Obviously, I have interest in Lucas Giolito. He is probably overall the most well-rounded pitcher on the slate, which is weird to say, but this year he is. But the matchup for the price, I can go elsewhere, especially when Vegas thinks he's an underdog today. That's a little bit alarming. So yeah, Rich Hill, in terms of 8,000 or above, is where I go, which automatically leads me to tell you that this is going to be a stars and scrubs slate. If Max Scherzer is pitching today and he is 100% fine, no pitch limit, which I imagine there wouldn't be if it's just a broken nose, but imagine it's going to affect him somewhat, I probably have interest in Scherzer. But at this point, we don't have that news. Zach Greinke, I think, is a fine pitcher for cash. You're going to have more safety net there, but his strikeout upside just doesn't allow me to get him at $9,000 for his price point. So right now it's just Rich Hill for 8,000 or above, which is very odd for me. I usually have 2 or 3 pitchers from up there. Let's jump all the way down to the low range down here, right? So Aaron Sanchez at 5,000 against the Angels, no way. Aaron Sanchez is absolute garbage. If he gets to the 5th inning, it's a miracle. The guy has a 5.32 SIERA. That's terrible. He doesn't do anything right. He only strikes out 17% of righties, which is what he'll see a lot of in this lineup. Sure, he'll see some lefties in the middle of that order. He gives up 21% strikeout rate, or he gets 21% strikeout rate against them. That's terrible. Broken record of the day, the Angels don't strike out. They have power. No Aaron Sanchez for me. This one's interesting to try and cover. Eric Feed, because I don't know if he's the starting pitcher. This is what I'm going off of Roto Grinders. I don't know who the starting pitcher is yet for Washington. The probable is Scherzer. It's a doubleheader. I believe Corbin might be going early. I don't know how they're doing this. I didn't check the early slate yet. But Eric Feed, look, even if he does pitch, I don't want him. I have to, and the analysis, if it's somebody else, will be on Patreon then. But Eric Feed, Washington against Philly, the guy doesn't go deep into the games. Does not have any strikeout stuff. Strikes out 10% of righties. Does not have any strikeout stuff against lefties. If indeed he is starting this game, get some lefties from the Philly team in this lineup. I guess Bryce Harper, if Jay Bruce is back. He gives up a lot of power to lefties, 228 ISO. He does limit the power to righties, so I don't want a full team stack against him, but I would do a mini stack or some one-offs from the left-hand side of the plate. Joseph Palumbo. I believe he has started once this year, so the sample size you're seeing is, one start that he went 4 innings. He's now being recalled, I believe, from AA to go up against this Cleveland team, which Jose Ramirez finally donged yesterday. Is this the emergence of Jose Ramirez? Probably not. But Joseph Palumbo today, $5,500. Look, the matchup is not terrible for coming back up. It's a very average team in terms of their power, a little bit below average. Jake Bauer, same team, slowly starting to bring that up, playing really well. Kipnis continuing to play really well. He's been batting cleanup at second base. So their power numbers are slowly coming up for Cleveland, but it's still a little bit below average. Their strikeout stuff, they don't strike out as much as you would expect this team to. So Joseph Palumbo, one start. We really can't base stuff off of that. He only went 4 innings. He's coming up from the AA where he is a bit stretched out. But I don't know. I'm very indifferent to this. I don't think that his stuff is dominating by any means. In the minors, he had average strikeout stuff. So when you bring average strikeout stuff up from the minors, that usually doesn't bode well. Now, he didn't allow base runners in the minors. His problem in the minors was that he did give up home runs. So again, when you come up from the minors and you're a pitcher who does give up 1 home runs and 2, you don't have great strikeout stuff. Usually that gets exploited even more in the majors to where you're not striking out more batters. And if you're giving up home runs, fly balls, you're going to give up more of those in the majors. So yeah, Joseph Palumbo for me is not a guy as of right now that I want to get to, especially at 5,500. Now, if this is a guy where sometimes we see minor leaguers coming up and they're priced at 5,000 flat, 4,600, then maybe at the punting spot. But as of right now, I think there's better punt plays, and we're about to get to 2 of them. Adam Pluko, he's $5,900. This guy, he's returned from injury, and he's pitched 4 times. He had 1 blow-up spot 2 starts ago. Outside of that, he's pitched really well. The price tag at $5,900 is surprising to me. Look, he's facing Texas, all the power in the world, but a couple of those power bats are out of the lineup. Joey Gallo is out, and I still believe that Hunter Pence is out. So if not the 2 most powerful guys on the team, are now out of the lineup. Adam Pluko goes out there today, and he does have not the greatest strikeout stuff, 22% to righties, nothing to lefties. That's alarming, right? Does not get ground balls. He pitches to contact, and a lot of that time, the contact is fly balls, 50% fly ball rate. Look, this guy's getting extremely lucky. I mean, his SIERA of a 4.91 is pretty telling in terms of how bad he is, but based on his ERA and based on the damage that he's given up so far, is showing that it's not as bad. Now, keep in mind, there's a small sample size. One of those games he got blown up. So the 3 home runs per 9, I believe, is a little bit of an over-exaggeration, but he is giving up power. I mean, when you give up 50% fly balls in 4 starts, you're probably going to end up just giving up home runs naturally, especially when you don't strike guys out. So Adam Pluko, here's the thing about him. He's getting extremely lucky. Very lucky this year through 4 starts. He is not that good of a pitcher as 3 of those 4 starts have indicated. But I don't think he's as bad as a $5,900 pitcher on a slate like this where you're kind of forced in to throw some punts. And yes, this Texas team is very scary, but out of all the pitchers in the low range, really below $7,000, he by far has the best strikeout matchup in terms of the opponent he's going up against. Now, his stuff is not the greatest for striking batters out, but again, below 6,000, below 7,000, you're rarely going to find a pitcher that does have good strikeout stuff. So Pluco, recent form, if you want to take a golf term, he looks good. The matchup against Texas, I think, is a little bit better than people are going to indicate. It's a very neutral ballpark in Texas. And again, there's going to be no Hunter Pence. I don't believe he's still in there or not. Hunter Pence, I don't believe he's still in there. And then no Joey Gallo. So the big smashers in the 3 and 4 spot or the 4 and 5 spot in this lineup are not in there. So that helps him for sure. The good thing is he has been working deep into the games. Nowhere below $7,000 are you going to find a pitcher on this slate that averages, at least through 4 small starts, getting into the 6th inning more than Pluco does. He's been efficient, somewhat limiting the damage through 3 out of the 4 starts. Yeah, $5,900. I don't imagine I'm surprising anybody when you're watching this. Later in the day, he'll probably end up being chalk. He is the second pitcher in my player pool with Rich Hill. It's Adam Pluco. Next up, $6,100, Max Fried. Max Fried has looked bad. Is he a bad overall pitcher? No, he's young. He's still working some things out. Does he get a bad matchup today? No, he doesn't. He pitching in Atlanta, very bad matchup. I imagine if it's at least decent weather today there, the ball's going to fly. Now he gets the Mets, average ISO team, Pete Alonso on pace for 50-plus home runs. The guy's an absolute monster. Conforto hit a home run last night as well. So yeah, this Mets team has now above average power, and it continues to do that, weighted out by those teams. Cano finally hit a dinger a couple nights ago. If that can get going, this Mets team actually is a little bit dangerous. 24%, they strike out a little bit above average. They strike out a little bit more against lefties. So Max Fried, here's what he does. He limits the power to lefties. He strikes out 23% of lefties. A lot more upside against lefties. Righties, he still limits it. 180, limits it compared to others in the slate. 180 ISO is a little bit above average, but nothing totally alarming. So guys like Pete Alonso probably in favorable spots today overall. But Fried at 6,100, he has to be of interest to me. Look, 22% overall strikeout rate. It's better than Pluco's. Not going deeper into games as of late. This is concerning. The matchup against the Mets is something I do like. He's a 154 favorite today. Only has a 4 Sierra, which you would think would be worse based on past couple starts. That's a better number than you're going to see down here if we take out Joseph Palumbo's 1 start. It's the best number in terms of Sierra that you see below the $7,500 range. So Max Fried at $6,100 becomes another pitcher that I have interest in because, once again, there's not a lot of guys that I want to pair with a Rich Hill or really that's it if Scherzer's not on the slate that are going to allow me to still get up to bats if I go with Rich Hill plus Zach Greinke. So Pluco and Fried are sort of the punt plays that I like today. Below this $6,000 range or right around it. Let's keep going. So that's the third pitcher in my player pool. Drew Pomeranz, no shot at all. 4.65 Sierra, gives up 2 home runs per 9. Power to righties, doesn't strike guys out nearly as much as he should, at least based on the stuff that we've seen in the past. And now he gets the Dodgers. The biggest thing here is that this guy gives up home runs. He gives up 11% walk percentage, and now he's facing the Dodgers. All the Dodgers bats should be owned today. They're going to be mighty expensive in a ballpark that is pretty neutral. If anything, maybe it leans towards the hitter a little bit, but really neutral. The Dodgers bats are in a great spot. No Drew Pomeranz for me at 6,200. You best believe that you should get to Pluco and Fried. Steven Matz against Atlanta, another thing here that I do not want. This guy gives up 1.7 home runs per 9. He gives up 40% hard hit contact, which is top 4 on this slate, the 4th highest on the slate. He does not have strikeout stuff against lefties. You're going to get a lot of lefties, powerful lefties in this Atlanta lineup, about 3, maybe 4. And then righties, 25% strikeout rate. That's fine, I guess, but he gives up power to both sides of the plate. Over 200 ISO to lefties and righties. Steven Matz is going to get, I would imagine, clobbered today in Atlanta, which on this slate is the most hitter-friendly park. Atlanta 191 ISO, they don't strike out. There's no upside for Matz here. He doesn't work that deep into the games, 5 1/3 on average in an average matchup. This is by far nowhere near an average matchup. I wouldn't be shocked if Steven Matz is out of the game by the 4th inning. I like Atlanta bats today. So the Dodgers in Atlanta, they shape up nicely today in terms of bats I like. I probably favor Atlanta more so because Steven Matz does give up. Yeah, Pomeranz gives up a lot of home runs. But I imagine Atlanta's bats, and I have not looked, are going to be a little bit more affordable throughout the lineup. And again, they have upside throughout the lineup. If Albies is going to be batting 8th in this lineup with power upside, then yeah, I'm fine getting to him compared to whoever's batting 8th for the Dodgers. So, nothing there. So below $7,000, it's Fried and Pluco, pretty far above everybody else. Pluco first for me, and then Fried. Moving through the 7K range now, which is where we have to finish up. There's about 6-7 pitchers in this range. Let's start at the top end. Daniel Ponce de Leon, he's going up against Miami today. A 552 Sierra, not great. Look, this is limited starts, right? How many starts has this guy had? It has to be 1 start, right? I think it's 2, actually. I think he started twice. Yeah, he started 2 times, went 5 innings, and then 4. And the reason I thought he started twice, because you see a 19% walk percentage. That's terrible. That's why. How many guys has he walked? He's walked 3 batters and 4, so that's not great. You don't have command. Now, somehow he's limited the damage, and he gets the best matchup in terms of the opponent limiting their damage on the slate. Miami strikes out around average. They have no power overall, and now you're facing or playing in a pitcher-friendly ballpark in St. Louis. This guy stinks. Daniel Ponce de Leon. You're walking way too many batters. Strikeout rate against righties, again, 2-game sample size. We can't really look into this because he has a 61% strikeout rate versus lefties, but I imagine he's faced like 4 lefties or 5 lefties and he's struck out 3 of them. Big whoop. But 8% strikeout rate to righties, that's pretty alarming. That's probably something that stabilizes definitely a little bit higher, and the 61% stabilizes definitely a lot lower. But Daniel Ponce de Leon, the matchup is the only thing that people are going to jump at because he's facing Miami, who slowly but surely is gaining more power. Brian Anderson hits a home run last night, right? And by gaining more power, I mean compared to their 080 or 070 ISO to begin the year, now it's around 112, approaching 120 each day that goes by. So, yeah, the matchup's great. The pitcher, through 2 starts, has not shown me anything other than not having a ton of control and not being able to work deep into the games, 4 and 5 innings pitched, albeit against tougher matchups. I probably don't get there. To be honest with you, at $7,800, I'd rather go down. Honestly. I'd rather save $2,000, get to Adam Pluko, and just go up in bats. Eduardo Rodriguez against Minnesota today, a guy that I usually like playing because there is strikeout upside, strikes out 24.7% of righties, 25% of lefties, and he's usually priced around $8,000 or less. The problem here is that he's playing in Minnesota, a very pitcher-friendly ballpark, but a very, very good team. If you want to get very creative and just go contrarian and probably not be optimal, but that's sometimes what you have to do to win a tournament, Eduardo Rodriguez is a $7,500 pitcher who realistically more times than not is right around 8K or a little bit more. The problem and the reason he's priced down is dynamic pricing on DraftKings. He's facing Minnesota, the best team on this slate and in the league in terms of overall power. They're 1 through 9 hitters when Brian Buxton, although he's injured, he's a 9 hitter usually, and the guy has like 7 or 8 home runs in the year. That's pretty scary. Albeit, though, the Yankees now with Giancarlo back and Edwin Encarnacion homered yesterday, and Judge coming back, their 9 hitter is soon going to be Gleyber Torres, probably, who's got like 15 dongs on the year. So that's pretty scary as well. But yeah, Minnesota doesn't strike out, so it limits all that strikeout stuff for a guy like Rodriguez. Rodriguez does give up a lot of power to lefties, the highest on the slate, really. So in terms of getting power or in terms of getting upside, yeah, go to your lefties from this Minnesota team, Marwin Gonzalez, whoever else it might be. Go to them. Eduardo Rodriguez, though, limits power to righties, which is good to see. Does not walk a ton of guys. There's a lot of upside for Rodriguez here in this matchup if he didn't have to play or at this price point if he didn't have to go up against Minnesota. I think he's a sneaky tournament option. I just don't want to test the waters against Minnesota, so I'm going to pass at $7,500. The 4th pitcher in my player pool, and really the main one that I have interest in on this slate in this $7,000 tier is John Lester. Go back and look at John Lester's game logs. He has had to face, outside of Miami, which was like his 3rd start, and he's having a decent year, John Lester. Outside of Miami, which was his 3rd start of the year, he's had to face Milwaukee, Houston, the Dodgers, the Angels, just difficult teams to go up against. He's had like 8 starts on the year, and only one of them has been against a weak opponent or an opponent that allows you to strike them out a lot and does not have a ton of power. And he's fared well in a lot of those matchups. Some of them he's gotten rattled around, as you would presume. Now he gets Chicago, a White Sox team that's power is slowly coming up, more and more power. Jimenez is a big reason why, but still a low power rating of a 152 ISO when the league averages around 170. Now you're in a ballpark in Chicago, I mean, same team, same city, but in the Chicago Cubs Wrigley Field that right now is playing very pitcher friendly, and this Chicago team does strike out. What are the downsides to John Lester? Well, he gives up hard hit contact. He gives up 1.53 home runs per 9. He only has a 22.9% strikeout rate against righties, 21.8 against lefties. So he's in this mid-range, giving up power to a lot of guys. But I am honestly going to chalk a lot of that up to he's playing teams that lead the league, or his pitching this year is one of the hardest schedules yet against teams that are leading the league and batters that are leading the league in hard hit contact and home runs, right? Your Christian Yelichs, your Mike Trouts, the Angels that don't strike out, that's going to lower you. Milwaukee, that at that point when he played them was not striking out. Who else? The Dodgers, they don't strike out, they have power. Just all these teams. Houston, they don't strike out, they have power. That the matchups stink. Now you finally get a good one. John Lester, to me, at $7,400 is a very interesting play, a play that I really, really want to get to if I can. I really like the idea of getting to John Lester and even getting to Pluko and making John Lester your SP1 today. And yes, that's scary. You don't have a more expensive pitcher, but there's nobody else that I like really. Yeah, Rich Hill, his matchup today is really, really good. But what if he only goes 5 2/3 innings and gets you 23 points? John Lester can do that. John Lester can definitely do that in this matchup. So yeah, I do like Rich Hill still, but John Lester is my fourth guy into my player pool. Jake Arrieta, I'm not getting to. There's still concerns with me. No upside against lefties. Really no strikeout upside here. A 4.85 Sierra walks 10%, 9.7% of batters in a ballpark today that is not going to play too well to the pitchers. Washington, get lefties, get Juan Soto into your lineup. He's been way too cheap on DraftKings the last few days. They've been rained out. If he's still cheap, get Juan Soto in as a one-off. Trevor Richards finally priced down. How the hell was this guy priced at like $9,000? Now he's or Trevor Williams, right? But Trevor Richards will go to at $7,100. Don't know how he was priced in around $9K or whatever he was. Goes up against St. Louis today, which is a nice pitcher's matchup in terms of limiting power in a ballpark today in St. Louis that is going to help the pitcher out more so than the hitters. 4.96 Sierra, strikes out 25% of righties, which is nice. The matchup though does not allow for him to do much better than that. I don't have interest in Richards at 7,100. I'd rather just go up to Lester for 74 on this slate, or go down all the way $1,000 or more to Fried and Pluko. Trevor Williams, Pittsburgh against Detroit. Look, a really good matchup for Trevor Williams here. He just has no strikeout stuff. He limits the power, 0.67 home runs per 9. He's a very safe pitcher. Trevor Williams is a cash-type pitcher because he has no upside for striking guys out, but he won't walk them. He won't give up home runs, and he'll work deep into the games. He averages about 6 innings per start. He gets a Detroit team today that does not have the greatest power and does not make a lot of contact. So Trevor Williams is a very safe pitcher. I'd rather him in cash than in a tournament. Honestly, I'd rather go for the upside with John Lester today against Chicago, or go down once again. Jordan Zimmerman's coming back from an injury. He didn't look good in the minors. His last start, he gave up 4 runs over 4 innings, and was not overpowering guys with any strikeout stuff. So he's making his first start, I believe, since April. He got 4 starts in this year, but he's looked terrible in the year so far. Gets a matchup today against Pittsburgh, a team that doesn't strike out, a team that doesn't have a ton of power, but in a ballpark that's not favorable. Yeah, I'm not going to go to Zimmerman yet today. I think this guy's still probably injured or just still has issues. He's not the same pitcher that he once was. So just to recap, the top range, as long as Max Scherzer is out today, my only interest in the top range is really going to come from Rich Hill. Zach Greinke is more of a cashy type play for me. Lucas Giolito, sure. I mean, you can get to him if you have the extra cash. I think it's fine. In the mid-range, John Lester is really the only guy I want to get to. I think Eduardo Rodriguez is a very dangerous but interesting contrarian option in GPPs if he's not owning or gets any ownership. But for me, Lester's my second pitcher in my player pool as of right now at 6:30 in the morning. And then I jump all the way down to Max Fried and Adam Pluko, 6,100 and 5,900. These are guys that at their price points I do like. They allow me to go stars and scrubsy, or they allow me to just go all the way up for my bats if I don't want to pay up for 2 pitchers. I like Pluko more than Max Fried, but the matchup is tougher in terms of his opponent has a lot of power. The upsides, though, are that there's not going to be any Hunter Pence or Joey Gallo, probably the 2 best power hitters on that Texas team, and they do strike out. And their replacements do strike out and don't have power, so that's good. So those are my 4 pitchers as of right now. If I had to give you a 5th pitcher to throw into a player pool as of right now, it's probably Lucas Giolito, if we're saying Max Scherzer's not on the slate. Otherwise, take out Giolito, put Scherzer in. But for the most part, I don't want to get there. Those are really the 4 pitchers I'm looking at. In terms of bats on the other side of this thing, right? I think that you can target all the bats in the world with Atlanta against Steven Matz today. Gives power up to both sides of the plate in this Atlanta ballpark. Might as well be named Coors Field when Coors Field is not in the slate because it is just favorable to the upside. There's going to be expensive bats there, but I think there are ways to make your pitchers or get cheaper pitchers, whether you're punting with one or whether you're paying down or playing in the mid-range. There's not a lot of stud pitchers on the top end, so if there's no Scherzer or any really appealing spots on the top end. So I think you can fit a lot of those expensive bats from Atlanta or the Dodgers as of right now early on. I think I have a lot of interest in Atlanta and the Dodgers in terms of stacking up a full team. Philly lefties make sense to me if Eric Fried is the starter. If it's Scherzer, I don't want anything from the Philly side. And then the Angels, they make some sense, more so from the left-handed side of plate. Sanchez does limit power overall, and he limits it to righties. So as we just scan through this a little bit more, that's really all I'm seeing right now. I don't want any Boston bats against Kyle Gibson, or at least I don't want to full stack them. You can take one-offs with lefties. Gibson has had some trouble there, giving up a lot of power, and mainly his power against lefties. Outside of that right now, nothing stands out. I imagine you can get some cheap Detroit and Miami bats, as you usually can, against Daniel Ponce de Leon and against Trevor Williams. I'm not opposed to that. Trevor Williams does limit damage overall, so does Ponce de Leon in terms of home runs, but you're really probably not going to get that anyways, so you're just trying to get cheap guys into a forward top pitching. I don't think that's needed on this slate. So the way I'll finish the slate in terms of hitting, right now what's standing out to me is Washington's lefties, Juan Soto as a one-off, a big one-off home run bomb coming today most likely, and then all the Atlanta bats and all the Dodgers bats. find a way to get to them. That's it, guys. My name's Sal. Before you leave, if you are not yet subscribed, please take 2 seconds before you turn this video off. Hit the subscribe button. Helps me out a ton. Follow me. Go over on Patreon. You can find out my top stacks and top pitchers for the slates that I'm playing. I'll rank them 1 through 5, 1 through 6, whatever it is. And then if you want the afternoon stat sheet, that'll be on Patreon as well. This one will be there too. You can support me there. My name's Sal. Best of luck tonight, everybody. Peace out, guys.